Hello, hello.
Hello.
Yes, I hear us. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and thank you for joining us here at Code It Live. As you may know, maybe many of us, many of you, if you have joined us in the past or if you're new, a big welcome. But we do a bunch of things on this channel throughout the week. Mondays we do CMS and podcasts. Tuesdays are for Unity, and Chris is actually a Unity guy. So we're building a VR world for a conference. That's a lot of fun. Wednesdays we do React and UI. Thursdays we do all things Xamarin and .NET. Yesterday we had pretty much an all-day stream on Silverlight migration. That was a lot of fun. So hopefully some of you joined us for that. And today is Friday, which means we get to kick back a little bit and sit back and enjoy some nice conversations. We are all living through a tough year with the pandemic around, so we don't get to hang out with the folks that we like working with or see out in the community. So this is our kind of time to catch up and talk to folks who are passionate about their craft and what they do. So I'm excited for this. My name is Sam Basu. I am a dev advocate at Progress Software, and with me, I have my very good friend today, Chris Gardner. So Chris, how are you, sir?
I am very good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah. So I have known Chris for years and years now, but go ahead and introduce yourself, Chris.
Sure. My name's Chris Gardner. I am a software developer currently working for an advertising agency for reasons they don't like me to say which one, but it's fine. I also am a speaker and a streamer, so I try to go around the country and, well, I used to. Now I'm trying to do more virtual things. But go around and talk about used to do a lot of talk about game development. I still love game development, but the kind of way I used to teach it shifted. So now I'm going more into, I don't want to say hardcore C sharp, but really showing what C sharp is and what it can do and how it really works under the streams. Because I have this fundamental belief that if you're a tinkerer and you understand the underlying principles, then doing any of the stuff on top of it's not an issue at all. And then, of course, I do all that 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 p.m. Central to 2 p.m. Central. I host a stream here on Twitch under my channel name, Freestyle Coder.
Okay. Yeah, and you have Chris's Twitter handle and the stream handle right there, so please go check him out. So, Chris, where do you live? And do you like it? Hate it?
I currently live in Huntsville, Alabama. I, for the most part, like it. The Huntsville part's really cool. The Alabama part, occasionally we have problems with. Um, but for the most part, it's great. I didn't ever plan on it, and everybody says this, but I didn't plan on being here. I grew up North Carolina, went to school in Colorado for 2 years. During that time, my parents moved. So when I left that school in Colorado, I meant to come back and spend a short period of time building money before I would move back to North Carolina. And then through a friend of a friend, got a job. My tech career started, and here I am 24 years later.
Oh, so like life happened and you settled
Yeah,
in Huntsville.
exactly.
Cool, cool. So again, I mean, I have known you for a long time, but what do you do in your present job? What are some of your responsibilities?
So, as I mentioned, I currently work for an advertising agency. So it's a full service, everything, print ads, television commercials, whole nine yards. I work in the digital division, and I work in a very specialized area of the digital division. Because within digital period, we have, I don't know, 30-ish people who work on websites for people and all that other type of stuff. I'm in this small 6-person group off to the side that really does, if you need a custom web application for something you're doing, we're the team that hits. Everybody in the company uses Mac and runs on WordPress and all that for the websites, except for us, which is like 6 people who run Windows and do .NET and hardcore lever Azure and stuff like that. And then I am the back end guy. So there's me, who's the back end guy. There's another guy who is a brilliant front end guy. And then there are 2 people in the middle that are kind of full stack, but also if we do stuff with Umbraco, there are CMS configurators and things like that. And then, of course, we've got a tester and a project manager type person. But that's our team. And so it's basically custom stuff for whatever our clients need.
Very cool, very cool. Now, and I see your background. Like, I know you're a hardcore geek at heart. You got tons
Oh
of
yeah,
toys around. What? And I know also, like, you have kids. You have two, right?
I have two. Yes, I have two daughters, 110, 1 8.
Oh, nice, good age, and just about getting into stuff and
Yeah,
figuring out the interests. So, like, what do you tell your kids? Like, what do you do for a living?
I tell them, I make computers do what I want to. That's basically it. That they both have their own computers. Plus, the school gives them Chromebooks, so all their schoolwork goes through the Chromebooks, and everything's 100% digital within the Huntsville City school system. Um,
Hey,
my audio
so
level is quite low. I can
yeah,
fix that.
Yum Yum Cake Monster, good to see you. I know you joined
How
us
about that?
yesterday.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better, I think,
Yep.
on my, because I mean, I got nothing else on you. You're maxed out. Yeah, yeah, that sounds much better.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Yum Yum.
But yeah,
That's a good handle, by the way.
but yes, we they have computers. They're huge into Minecraft. I think one of them here soon is probably about to hit the point where she's going to really start to want modding Minecraft, which means I'll have to buy her a different version of Minecraft, but that's okay.
Mm.
And get into that stuff. So they see the stuff I do. They've seen me work out on the couch plenty of times. They know, oh, I run a conference too. They've been
Just by the way.
just, oh, by the way, I run a conference.
Yeah.
They've seen me for the past 5-6 years running that, coding stuff for that, sitting on the couch at nights doing that type of stuff. So yeah, they know roughly what I do. They know that I do a lot of stuff that deals with A, people, and B, geeky programming stuff.
Oh, yeah, good for you. So, I mean, you're obviously at a good point in your career, and you're doing a lot of things. But where did you start? Like, did you always want to do this stuff?
Depends on your definition of want to do this stuff.
Okay.
So, and I don't mean that as a trick question or avoiding anything when I say that. So I also have a huge interest in music. If you kind of glance around the room, you can probably pick some of that stuff out. I always wanted to be a musician. I've been playing guitar for 30 years now, and I've
Wow.
got my DJ turntable stuff there, and got a bass, and behind me is a drum kit.
Nice.
So I mean, so that was generally always the plan, but from a very crucial age, because my dad was in the military, we moved around a lot, but we were stationed up in McCord Air Force Base, which is about an hour south of Seattle. It's technically just a little south of Tacoma. From ages 6 to 10, and it just so happened that during that time, when I was about 8, my dad started getting into more techie stuff, and he brought home this old TRS 80 Model 3, the one with the tape drive. And it was also just a brutal winter, and we lived out in the middle of nowhere. So I was kind of trapped in this house in the middle of the woods with nothing but a computer and an Atari.
Mm-hmm.
And so between the two, I started hacking around the computer when I could. And then we found this little game, and I played this game. And then I ran out of levels on the game and did some more hacking, because you could break computers really easily and not hurt anything those days. This is 84 for a reference. And then I discovered that it was written in BASIC, and you could type in some commands and look at the code. And then I kind of read through it because BASIC was very readable, and kind of reverse engineered how to make my own levels, and kind of always did programming and played around and tinkering stuff. But the plan was always music. Coming out of, and I was in several bands in high school and several bands out of high school. But the tech was always just the fun thing I did in the background. When I originally was looking at going to college, the original idea was that I was going to double major in music and computer science, and that way I'd kind of have both to go back on. But I ended up going to the Air Force Academy, which didn't have a music program, and their comp sci program, considering you have to finish it in 4 years, is just insane. It's like 146 credit hours, and you have to do it in 4 years on top of all the other military stuff.
Oh, boy.
So there was no way to do any sort of music minor or anything there. So when I came back out, and I was building money, as a 19-year-old, when I left the Air Force Academy and left the Air Force, working at coffee shops and stuff, and ice cream shops, and trying to do acoustic gigs and get bands together. It was all just, again, move back to North Carolina and see what happened. But I got offered a job through a friend of my dad's as kind of like an intern at this programming shop. And then that led to, and that company dissolved, another gig, which led to another gig. And then this how it was. So I was always doing it, but it was never the intent to be a career.
Right.
But I've been very fortunate that because of the way my mindset of approaching programming, and it also fits in that I dropped out of colleges like 3 or 4 times. I didn't actually get a degree until I'd had 15 years industry experience. The way all that worked out, I got a lot of these hackery type positions where I was given free reign to not necessarily.
So you learn a lot.
Yeah, so I could really dig deep. I worked for a lot of small companies. I worked for a lot of, just get stuff done, not the whole go through the huge thing. I remember I was like this senior level developer with 10 years of experience, and because of the hackery way we were doing things, I had no clue what some of the things we take for granted, like generics and interfaces and things like that were. Of course, this is pre C# at this point, so we're talking C++. But had no clue what these things were, and kind of had to learn them after the fact because I was always in such of a low level hackery environment with all the jobs I got. So it worked out really well for the way my mindset happened. And it's also one of the reasons why I dropped out of college like 3 times before I finally got a couple degrees, was because the way they were teaching school and the way I was experiencing work were so different. It just killed me for a while.
Yeah, it's funny. Like a lot of us kind of got started into computers. Like we wanted to make things move, and like early on, like you had those like simplest of computers, and that's how you wanted to spend your time, and that's kind of sucked you in. But it's interesting to know, like you wanted to do music, and then you, even though your career is in tech, you kind of kept on with it. Like, do you still play?
I don't play as much as I'd like. I do play the drums a lot by just doing it in Rock Band 4. So that's a real drum kit, but it's actually got the MIDI adapter on it, so I can plug it into my Xbox.
Sure.
But I've got several guitars over there that every now and then I'll pick up, especially if I'm waiting on like a long compile or a long tech batch, and I know I'm going to be doing it a lot. I can run scales or try to remember how to play songs that I used to do and stuff like that. So I stay current. If I can, I actually want to start doing a couple streams where I actually just stream out the DJ and do a DJ set, which of course, copyright problems all over the place. There's no way I could, save the stream. You'd have to hit it live, but do stuff like that just to stay active because, having 2 kids, and all, I don't get, before the pandemic hit, I could at least go out and see 5 or 6 concerts a year, but being able to go out and do what you have to do to be a musician, if you're not already established at this point, just isn't going to happen.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to make a full-on living with music, and that's just a little bit of a sad reality. But you may be careful what you say here, because I don't know if you're up for it. At the end of it, we can ask you to play us a little something in whatever you may want. But
so normally I wouldn't turn that down, except for I was doing some lawnmower repair last week and I completely messed up my thumb. So now would not be the good time to do it.
All right. No worries. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what you do. I really appreciate folks like you who kind of dig in deep into some of the technologies that we work with, because like so many of us essentially just like skim the surface of languages and compilers, and we just make stuff happen, but we often don't know what's under the covers. You tend to be somebody who looks under and tries to understand. So, like, given your passions and given your job responsibilities, like, what's the most exciting thing in what you do every day? What keeps you motivated, and like, what are some of the challenges?
Well, some of the challenges with what we're doing is with the company I work for is it's all contract based and funding based. So sometimes I'll look at something and go like, "Ooh, I can fix that," and the customer goes, "We're not paying for it." So the job goes, "We're not paying for it," and you're like, that's the biggest challenge. And sometimes I just do it because I know it's going to work better, and I want to see how that works and things like that. It's amazing what you can get away with when you don't bill for it.
Right.
But that's the things that when you just have to get kind of head down and what is fundamentally a CRUD app, there's only so many ways you can do that, and it's got to be done, and especially with all the music stuff and whatnot, I'm very creative, but I'm not necessarily visually artistic. There's a reason I'm a back end person. So especially if we hit like we've got to crank out this new CRUD app for somebody, and I'm completely in back end without having to do any sort of interesting stuff, just literally in and out of the database. And the front end guy gets to have all the fun with all the designers and everything and making everything look pretty. And he's like, I just need this JSON call to return this. Okay.
Like here. Yeah, it's interesting, and this is like maybe uniquely like how our brains are wired. Like just such a huge majority of devs are visually challenged to make things look nice, and I don't think it's just I mean we have tools, we have better tools that help us at least get to a good starting point. But if you ask me to make an app pretty, I freeze up because I don't know. I'm artistically quite challenged, and I think that's true for lots of people. It's good to have designers. It's good to have UX people around.
Right. The way I like to explain it to people is that I'm really good at telling you what bad UI is and getting rid of bad UI. I'm really bad at making good UI. So I can make something that is completely simple and functional and easy to use, but I'm not going to make this brilliant, pretty design. That is just not the way my brain thinks. To me, because I'm, especially when you start talking about, degree in math, all this musical stuff, et cetera, it's such a functional output in my mind that I can get you to that perfectly functional works, maybe doesn't look the best, and then I need somebody else to come on top and do that look the best. And we have some of the best people in the business that I work with that can get that beautiful polished look, and they can do it so fast I can't believe what's going on. Nice. But that's not me. But when you hit those places where you don't get to be creative even in the programming parts, that's when the drudge of the job will start to get to you for a while.
That's when you want to get out. But I mean, let's dive into what you just said. I just know so many people who have brains that, and I keep hearing this, like the programming that we do and then the way we think logically about stuff lends itself very easily to music. And you see folks like Carl Franklin, yourself, and David Neal, Burke Holland. I mean, I can keep on going names of folks who are into programming, but they're also passionate musicians. So why do you think this is the case? Like, does it come naturally to you? Like, do the two things come naturally?
They do, and there are some similarities that I think are important, but in a lot of other ways, I think it's just a weird coincidence. Because I know plenty of people who also, couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. They're great programmers.
That's me. Well, I'm not a great programmer either, but like I could not do anything artistic, anything creative with music or arts of any kind.
But you have that beautiful grand piano in the background.
I know. Yeah, I'm gonna go play it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Just like I'm gonna go grab my 7-string guitar over there and show you something with it.
I'm still lazy, and I was gonna ask you about streaming, but and Chris is a fellow streamer. I'm just too lazy. Like 4 days a week, I got stuff that happens on a green screen. I'm just too lazy to bring this thing down, so it just stays up.
Well, to me, with my idea, and I'll get back to the music question.
Yep.
Part of my idea, my personal branding is this is me. So I could go get a green screen and I could drop it down, but this
it's all
me. It's anybody who's met me, that doesn't surprise them.
Yeah,
not one bit.
Yeah.
And I try not to. The only thing that is not me on stream or when I'm doing anything like that, and you can attest to this because you've seen me in person so many times, it's not funny, is that when you don't have a camera in front of me, or a microphone in front of me, I cuss like a sailor. And that just comes from growing up with a father who was in military special forces, and then me going to the military for 2 years, and then being around defense contractors so much here in Huntsville. It's just natural. It just comes out. But I've gotten really good at when I need to not to. I can not do it. But yeah, naturally speaking, you'd think I have Tourette's.
I actually did not know you were in the military, so thank you for your service.
So I normally don't talk about it. And like when I do job interviews and job applications, they'll always have are you a veteran? And I always put, I decline to answer. The reason being is because, yes, out of high school, I went to the Air Force Academy for 2 years, which means when you get there, you become active duty Air Force. I actually had a rank. When I left, I was a C2, which is a really specialized rank. Nobody pretty much knows what it is, but I was a C2. I actually have a DD-214, which is registered with the Veterans Administration because you kind of have to. Yes, I'm a veteran, but I went to school for 2 years. There are so many people who are veterans who need our help that I don't need to be getting in the way of that. So you get me in person, you get me to the interview, you get me, you know, everything's good. I have no problem mentioning the fact of what I did, but I don't want that idea that I am a veteran technically to be an influence on anything, because I wasn't. There are so many people.
Sure.
I mean, my dad was Air Force Combat Control Team for most of his career, and technically he was for all of his career, but the last couple of years he moved in, when he became an officer, he moved into more managerial, but he wasn't. But I mean, he went to Vietnam, he went to all these other small little skirmishes I can't talk about. He was a really frontline guy. I'm not that guy. Those are the guys that deserve all the stuff they get, not me. So yeah, I like it when people say thank you for your service, because yes, I actually did go through basic training and all that other stuff, but no, I'm not that veteran that needs help. That's why I don't normally mention a lot.
Cool. All right. So the thing that I know you a lot over the years is what you do for the community. You are out there, you're speaking, you're writing, and you're encouraging others to be passionate in our craft, and you put together a big conference. So tell us about that.
Right. So we'll start with the conference part. Well, no, let's not start with the conference part, because to get to what the conference came from, you got to get to other places.
Mm-hmm.
So at the point in time when I started speaking, me and my dad started a company. It was a defense contractor type company. He was the president and CEO. My uncle was the COO. I was the CTO. Defense contracting, mostly IT stuff. We did a lot of development on the side. We developed some projects I'm kind of proud of, but really I was bored with this defense contract. And I wasn't really getting out as much. At one point in time, somebody, because I've been to big enterprise conferences before, like Tech Ed, back in the day and things like that, but I'd never known about the smaller community conferences. And somebody gave me basically a friend of my dad's was like, hey, I bought this ticket to DevLink up in Nashville. I can't go. Do you want the ticket? And that's the first time I'd heard about community conferences.
I remember DevLink so vividly. This was a conference that used to happen in Tennessee, and how long? Like it stopped like 4 or 5 years back, right?
It stopped the year I started DevSpace, but that's completely coincidental.
Okay.
But it originally started in Nashville. It moved to Chattanooga for the last couple of years. But it was my first ever conference experience. And so I got that one. I was like, oh, there's kind of this community thing going on. Well, also along the same time, I'm kind of stuck in this back office in the defense contractor. And I had been doing like some working at clubs and some music stuff on the side, but a lot of that had started to die down. And the being in front of people stuff was starting to get away from me. And so I had after I'd gone to a couple of these community conferences, came back around to, well, my dad was also an MCT, so I got an MCT. And so then I was like, well, I know how to talk to people and explain things, and I know how to act a fool in front of people. I'm not afraid to do it. So I threw my hat into the ring for speaking. Well, I'm also this huge gamer. You know, I mentioned the Atari 2600 way back when. You know, lifelong gamer doing all this other stuff. So and I'd been hacking away on Xbox development using XNA. So I started making these XNA talks that started getting picked up, and that started coming around. So then, you know, I was speaking at DevLink, and I was speaking at CodeStock, and I was speaking at CodePalooza, and all these local things. I even even got outside of the Southeast region with a couple of them, and that worked great because with these defense budgets, I basically had unlimited budget to play around with to go travel to do these things. Well, and all that happened, I noticed when I was doing a lot of the Southeast stuff, particularly like Nashville, which is only 2 hours away, or Chattanooga, which is only 2 hours away, or things like that, that I wasn't seeing a lot of the local people coming to them. I'd see 1 or 2 people from Huntsville that I knew from the community, but really I wasn't seeing a lion's share of them. And I sat back and thought about it. I'm like, you know, we have a pretty active, you know, at the time we had a pretty active user group community and technical community and things like that. Why aren't I seeing more of these people at these community conferences? And I realized, oh yeah, they all work for the government, and the government's not letting them go anywhere. Yep. They were all on Redstone Arsenal or NASA or something like that.
And it's not just about the budget. Like many people don't have the time and the luxury to take off for a few days and like leave their jobs and their families to go do a conference. So it helps having something local.
Right. And so the idea was, well, if they're not all going to come see this stuff, I'll bring the Dog and Pony Show to them, and thus DevSpace was born. So that, and it just so happened that I decided to start DevSpace at this as this small conference the same year DevLink decided to stop. But because I was a year behind trying to get things set up, I ended up starting, I think, the same year that Music City Tech, back then it was just Music City Code, started. So he moved back to Nashville. They had, Gaines was doing the Nashville conference, and then I started mine down in Huntsville at the same time.
Cool. I mean, I'll say this out loud. I've seen many of your sessions, and you are an amazing speaker. So kudos to all that you do and the passion that you bring. And then how's conference organization? I've done this myself for years and years. I know it's a lot of hard work, but how is it for you?
It's, to me, the biggest problem with conference organization, and it didn't hit me as much year one as it did the rest of the years, is I have people who want to help me, and I have to better learn to let them help me. Yep. And when I was when I was working as the CTO and being a development manager, and I had no problem delegating pieces off. But I think because there's an artistic show element to it, that in my head, I had to make sure all those beats got hit correctly, and releasing control of that was, and still is in some ways, a problem.
It's a huge thing. I mean, you have to let go. I mean, you cannot control every aspect of a conference, so you have to let people come up and give you the help that you need.
Right. So that's the biggest challenge for me is that, like, okay, there's thousands of tasks that need to be done ahead of time, right? And most of those tasks actually don't take much time. It's just you got to invest the time to do it. Like setting up a hotel room block, once you do the initial contacts and get everything going, so setting them up year from year, really only takes for us about an hour or two. You just got to call them up, tell them what the days are, tell them what number of days, they draft up the contract, you come in and sign it. It's not that's, but when you have 100 tasks like that, you're in your brain, you're like, I can knock this thing out real quick. But then as it starts steamrolling task on top of task, you get buried.
Yeah, and almost like a project management type hat you have to put on to make sure none of those 100 things drop out.
Right. So right now we have a really good crew with us. I've got somebody who handles the logistics with the venue. She's not really doing much this year since we don't have a venue. I've got a person who does most of our IT and backend infrastructure, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to worry about running the network at the VBC. I don't have to worry about keeping up to date with all of our nonprofit licenses and stuff like that. I've got another person who is really handling the finances, so I don't have to worry about the budget all the time. I can just be like, hey, how much money do we have left? Can we do this? What's the status of sponsorships? Let me know. So I've put myself into a point now where really I only deal with the speakers and the overall vision. Sure. And I have other people that can do it. And that's kind of helped a lot. Yeah. Except for in these times when I get overwhelmed in that part, right before the call for speakers starts and right before the call for speakers ends, I become this ball. It's weird. I become more nervous during the planning portions than I do during the show.
Yeah.
Because I learned year one, I was a wreck the whole time. I learned year two that there hits a point about little less than a week before the show. So our conference used to be Thursday, Friday. This year we were going to move, or it used to be Friday, Saturday. This year we were going to move to Thursday, Friday. But now because of the pandemic, we're doing a one-day online virtual on a Friday. But so about Monday beforehand, you just hit the point where you realize this is a freight train in motion. It's going forward without you. And you just have to sit back and let it happen. Yeah. And then I've had other people come up to me and say, hey, we're interested in starting something. And I won't call anybody out, although some of them are known public people. They're like, we're thinking about starting something in our area. What recommendation would you give? And the thing I always tell them is that if you can't work a second full-time job on top of your regular full-time job that shows absolutely nothing for a year, to be able to have the satisfaction to sit back for 2 days and go, I did this and enjoy seeing the people and the community and everything come together and be like, this is the payoff, this delayed gratification. Now I'm going to take a month off and do it again. It will chew you up and spit you out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, good for you, and thank you for what you do for your community and bringing all that locally. Now, I mean, as you mentioned, like this year is fun, right? So,
Yeah.
And I see you streaming all the time. When did you start streaming?
About a year ago. So, well, okay. So every year I do a charity gaming marathon called Extra Life. So it's generally in late October, early November. It's a 24-hour charity gaming marathon where we raise money for
Half-Life.
I've never played Half-Life on stream.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I have played other first-person shooters. I try to tend to more go towards puzzle games or adventure games. I'll generally hit Rock Band at some point on stream while doing. But the point being is I've been doing this for like 10 years. So I kind of always had the equipment and the Twitch channel and things like that set up. But I never really seriously thought about it. And then at one point in time, I was like, well, maybe I can start something. And I had the idea to do all the live coding stuff well before even some of the big people who are doing it now. I'm not going to say like, oh, he stole my idea because he didn't. But like, some of the big people you think about, like C# Fritz and all them that are doing it now, and like you guys who are successfully doing, I had the idea long before that, but I just, due to the way my job was structured at the time and things like that, I couldn't get the foothold to get the timing to get it done right. And I really, that community, yeah. And there's a huge investment for buying the equipment and things like that. So it was really about a year ago before I got everything set up, and now it's just attempting to go through and get everything working. And now I've got everything working. Originally I was doing 2 days a week, which was Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 2 Central. Now I'm up to 3 days a week. Now that I'm an affiliate, you got to kind of have the numbers have to come up a bit higher. So I'm doing it a bit more now. And I know the way I think and the type of stuff I stream about is such a weird niche, because you look at some of these other big name streamers and they're either doing like game dev, which is very sexy, or they're doing a lot of this is type of stuff you can immediately use. And it's very useful for people to come and have it on in the background and learn cool new tricks. And then you get the type of stuff I do, which is like, let's completely go down a rabbit hole and hack and learn the way data types work and make a library that I'm going to release that will generate a randomly generated anything, and things like that. And it's a lot interesting. It's a lot harder to
yeah.
Chad. It's a lot harder to actually get the viewers for that because it is such a deep dive. Yeah. But the people who do show up and talk and join us on the stream, it's really like, if you're into that type of geeking out and really learning what's going on, that's what my show's there for.
Yeah. And speaking of big names that Twitch, hello Chad, good to see you. Taylor & Code. That's Chad Green from Taylor & Code. All right, so like speaking of all the times that you have streamed, like what's like give us like a really fun moment and embarrassing moment.
Fun moment, and I think I don't know if the clip's still up on Twitch, but I had a clip on it. We were working on a tool which is currently up on GitHub called the Entity Creator, where you could create a generic Poco and then throw this through the program, and it would grab the text and even do some inline compilation and all sorts of weird stuff on it. And it would rewrite the class so that it became this really nice, wrote all the equals and the hash code functions for you automatically wrote a couple constructors. So you'd have a copy constructor and a default constructor and things like that. So you could take a 10-line Poco that had 7 data elements on it, and you end up with 200 lines where it's a completely fleshed out object. It's really useful and helpful to use. So during that process, at one point in time, to use it, my only rule is that the code has to compile. Is the only rule for the thing to work. So once the code compiles, the reason being is because I actually pull the source file and do some text processing to get all the pieces parts, but then I grab the assembly that it was compiled from and do some reflection on it to get some lower level stuff, like is it part of an enumerable, does it have a clonable method, things like that. Well, the original version of it I was having a lot of problems with, so we actually grabbed the code, rewrote it in a certain method, and then compiled it in the program so that I could do reflection on that version, which worked for a while until you started talking about dependencies within dependencies, and that's where that fell apart. So then we went back to the drawing board, and I really started digging deep into how get type and the .NET type system works and things like that. And at one point in time, I figured out how to create your own type dependency tree inside C# using get type so that it would auto resolve these references. And there was a beautiful moment where I actually clipped it on stream where I finally got it working to where I didn't have to basically create a source file and compile the code and go off that assembly. And I started giggling like an idiot when it happened. I mean, I think it was literally something like it compiled and worked, and I ran it and I saw it working. I was just like, that's probably the greatest moment. I hope that clip still exists. I have to make sure I find it and pinned it. One of the worst moments was I'd had I was going to do a game stream at night. There was a night I was going to do a game stream at night, and the way my capture cards were configured, it didn't work. And when I spin it up on stream, like an hour and a half troubleshooting audio issues. But an even better audio issue was I was trying to do a stream. I think it was on a Friday, do a coding stream. And everybody was like, hey, Chad, I think was there for that one. Was like, hey, your audio is not working. I'm like, okay. And I start looking, and yeah, my audio is not working. Hi, Curious Drive. And so I start trying to troubleshoot it. And like I mentioned to you before we started, this is where everything's set up for me to record because I use a development machine. And then over here is the actual machine that runs everything. So the machine's not even on camera. What had happened was I had just updated Windows 10 on that machine to the newest feature update. So it was a 2004 or whatever it is. And it completely destroyed my audio drivers. And I spent literally the entire hour on stream trying to get it to work, and eventually just had to give up. So it was like literally the entire hour was having Notepad open on my machine while I was over here yelling at the camera trying to get stuff to work. Then I'd come back up and type something up in Notepad and read the comments, and then I would come back over here and yell. That was probably the worst one.
Yeah. What do you do? I mean, you have to lower your inhibitions. We are hopefully amongst people who care about the craft, and sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. Like I embarrass myself every week.
Me personally, I really like it whether I'm doing a live stream or a talk. Let's talk to Chad about the talk from Heck that happened. That was not his fault, but it was at the Louisville.net users group. Where I love it when problems happen, where you just kind of get to reference it and own it and roll with it. Because if there are people who are thinking about getting into the, you weren't there that night, but it was at your users group. That was the point. We'll tell that story in a second. Where when they see these errors and see you roll with it and see it happens to everybody, then it helps make them feel better. So people are like, why don't you troubleshoot more off stream? I'm like, because I think it's actually more beneficial to see me troubleshoot on stream.
Yeah, more than like the tech. Sometimes like it's just a fellow developer's experience and the struggles that sometimes are helpful. And I did want to highlight something if I can here real quick. We are talking about Louisville. We're talking about user groups and speaking. Chad Green here has he's the organizer for CodePalooza, which is one of our favorite regional conferences, and that's coming up next week. So I think you're going to hear both Chris and me speak and a whole bunch of other friends, and so it should be a really good time. Yeah, and Chad's agreeing. When we kind of choke up because we are having issues, that's value. That's reality of what we do. So let's try to go through our emotions and I think there's value to be shared in what we do. So let's move on. No, sorry, did you have
Well, I
something
was
to
gonna
add?
say, and also the big problems like stream problems aren't as much fun. But when you see me on stream beat my head against the wall for 20 minutes, but it's because literally I forgot a semicolon or I forgot a comma or something really silly. I think when they see these guys who have been doing it for 25 years and are
Yeah,
maybe thought of it somewhat of esteem in the community, which I don't have the ego to think I am, but see us do it, they don't feel so bad.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's why I think it's really important to do that stuff, because everybody has those silly mistakes. If you ever watch my stream, you'll see I'll have Bing open and Mozilla open with 10,000 windows, and they're all, how does this function work? We're all doing it. Don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, exactly. We were doing a Silverlight migration thing all day yesterday, and I had a question mark missing in a NuGet config file, and like everything fell apart because like we could not resolve our dependencies. So that's the reality. Let's not feel bad. That's how we do our stuff. Yeah. Okay. So I had a few more things to ask you. Like, of all the things you see, like technology-wise, what's something that you have seen recently that really kind of interests and excites you?
The new phone I'm getting on September 10th.
Is that the Dual?
It is the Duo. I actually have already pre-ordered it.
Nice.
It will be here. I was a bit leery about it, and I'm not leery about Microsoft technology. So let's get one thing straight. When it comes to Microsoft hardware, I've always been really impressed with them. I've had Windows Phone 7s and Windows Phone 8s almost since day one. I was a hardcore believer of them. I didn't literally. I've still got my Lumia 950 over there on a charger with the SIM card on it. Love that piece of hardware. It just became unsupported and died, so I eventually had to move somewhere else.
We're showing our age here. Like I spent 3 years with Windows Phone. I remember you and me talking about a Windows Phone. It was a great experience, but yeah, it just didn't go anywhere.
I had the Surface Pro since the very first day it came out. I've got a Surface Go right here, which is when I'm doing my stream. So I have actually, people are like, I love having 3 monitors. I'm like, no, I love having one monitor that does one thing. So I have my laptop screen, which is my development computer. I have my streaming PC, which is controlling all the stream. And I have this little Surface Pro down here, which is what I monitor the chat room and things, or Surface Go, which is what I monitor the chat room and things like that with. But it's also great with the Surface Pen. I can go and sit on the couch and hack out ideas and things like that. So I've never had a problem with their hardware. So the hardware didn't bother me. I really don't like the fact it doesn't have a wireless charger on it. So I decided to bite that bullet. But any other feature it didn't have doesn't bother me at all.
But yeah, and I mean, folks complain about the pricing.
I hate with a passion. So the fact I hate this phone so much was why I decided I was going to get rid of it. This is and I don't want to throw shade because there are lots of good things about this phone. This is a Samsung S10. I got it basically right when it came out. Before that, I was using an iPhone 8, and I really just hated iOS. I had used Android in the past. I had been using smartphones since I had an original day one T-Mobile G1, which was the absolute very first Android phone in America. So I've been using Android for years. The Android ecosystem finally moved me to Windows Phone because I got tired of whether or not the manufacturer would update the operating system and things like that. So the fragmentation is what originally got me to move to Windows Phone. But so I have no problem with Android, but the thing Samsung put on top of this phone, plus this curved screen, which I think cell phone manufacturers, the curved screen and the non-bezel on the side is the worst thing you've ever done. Stop it. Stop it now.
You heard it here first. Chris is saying,
yes,
stop it. Stop.
Don't do it. Because most people are going to use their phone like this. And I can't tell you how many times I accidentally touch things. There's a reason there needs to be a slight bezel there. So and then also Samsung's One UI things they put on top of it just drive me crazy. But you can't drop back to a more stock Android on it, and you can't uninstall all their stupid apps. So that's why I hate this phone. And this, you got the huge camera module. This is basically a camera with a phone wrapped around it, not a phone with a camera wrapped around it. So except for the wireless charging, the Surface Duo checked all the boxes for me of what I really wanted. Plus, it's got the cool new tech factor, so we're going to give it a go. So that's the biggest thing I'm really excited about right now.
Good for you. And I mean, some folks were complaining about the pricing, but I mean, this is not the game right now. It's just trying to get something out. And
I do agree for some of the things. I do agree that with some of the things that are missing, the pricing might be a little high. But I think overall, considering it is a first product new to market and the amount of polish they've shown they've put on it, I'm willing to swallow that. Yeah. It may crash and burn, it may not. We're going to see what happens, but I think they're going to have it together enough that it'll be worthwhile.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, we have talked about tech for like 45 minutes, but tell us what Rest does outside of work and outside of when you're not geeking out. What's your social life like? What do you enjoy doing?
Well, right now my social life is sitting at home because of the pandemic. Yes. We're not going to mention that part, though.
No, we don't.
No, normally I'm a huge billiards player. You've played pool with me and seen how hard it can be to beat me sometimes. Although I'll give credit, Jeremy Likeness, he's a good pool player.
Yes.
We were actually we had it arranged, and I don't know if you people watching know Jeremy Likeness. If not, go follow him. He's a wonderful person. And also, but here recently, he very publicly mentioned that he got diagnosed with Parkinson's. So we were going to have this epic pool tournament at CodeStock because we really wanted to do it before and hopefully he doesn't, but before he degenerates more and he can't. But he is an outstanding pool player. And I know there are a few other people in the community that are as well. But and I've said this before, I'm also huge into like hot sauces and spicy stuff. I mean, I've got several bottles over here of just like uber hot sauces. And I've often told people if I'm ever in your area and you want to get me to drop everything so you can pick my ear for a while, invite me for either chicken wings or going to play pool, and you have my attention.
There you go. That's a date then for you.
That's the easiest way to go. Oh, it's like, well, I got to go do this, and this. Well, let's go get some wings and play some pool and talk some tech. All right, let's go.
Cool.
That's almost an immediate. But outside of that, I'm almost. Most people talk about how, in my free time, I'm like a big fan of this. I'm almost boring when it comes to that. I love spending time with my kids, so I don't do a lot of stuff outside that doesn't involve them. But like at home, we don't have cable. I don't go see movies, things like that. Just that type of itch doesn't, I don't get that type of itch. So a lot of times if I want free time, I'm this type of dork. I will admit it openly. It doesn't bother me. I will go on YouTube and watch like hardcore math videos and mathematical proofs and stuff like that, just because that's the type of thing that gets my brain working in a way that gets me to think creatively about other things. Because when you hear about, you've got this simple math proof or physics proof that everybody takes for granted. And when you look at the final proof when it's done, it's like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But when you think about before it existed and how they got there, and you look at the methods and you start looking at other intuitive ways to do those same proofs, it really gets the brain working on thinking about things outside the box. And so that's the type of thing that when I just want to sit down and not do anything, I watch math videos.
Good for you. Yeah, whatever gets your creative juices flowing. So
right.
Good stuff. Okay, maybe a trick question, but if you have $1 million right now, what would you do?
Well, first I'd pay off all my debt, but I'd still have plenty left over after that. I would probably still mostly do about the same stuff. It would make it easier to get access to some other things, update some hardware, more opportunities to really get out in front of people and speak. Hopefully once everything goes out, the company I currently work for as supportive they are about a lot of the things they do, because everything's contract based, they don't really have overhead money to send me to go speak at conferences and be that type of ambassador. So a lot of that comes out of my pocket, make it a lot easier to do that stuff. So I think mostly I would be able to get out more, and that's what I would do. But I enjoy what I'm doing right now overall. Why would I change that? Exactly. Yeah, maybe I would have this killer idea and go, well, I have $1 million laying around. Let's take a year off and see if we can do it. as a side project. But
Yeah.
you know,
And
that's even if you have your own money, you still have to push yourself towards that goal.
exactly.
And that
It
type of
speaks to your passion.
thing.
Like even with money, and we can have all the comforts, but you have to really enjoy what you're doing.
Right. And yeah, if I had the quote unquote $1 million idea and I had the $1 million to do it, maybe. But really, there's something to be said about being forced to focus on something. Which there are a lot of people out there, and I have nothing against entrepreneurs and people who work as independent consultants and things like that, to where they get to really pick and choose. But for me, because I am so creative and out there, having somebody to not only give me a box, but a time box and a thing to focus on and a set of guidelines, I can still be creative within those guidelines, but it gives me enough constraint that I can really get something done. And I've tried to do some independent consulting and stuff in the past, and I found that when your head's too far out there and there's nothing to rein it in, for me, it just goes away. So I enjoy having to where something keeps me focused and gives me that box that I have to be creative in more than having the full reins of everything. Excuse me. And if we go back to a music parallel, if you look at some of the greatest albums ever made, some of them had such supreme time boxes and constraints on them that the fact they had to laser focus and get those things done, or they had to deal with all the turmoil that was going on outside of the writing and the recording process, really helped shape that thing to what it became because of that external focus that had it happen.
Indeed. All right, Chris. I want to be conscious of your time as well. So, any parting thoughts, any inspirations, anything you want to leave us with?
Well, I've got to get the mandatory plugs. Hey, follow me on Twitter. Hey, come stop by the Twitch channel. Codepalooza, talking at, all that other good stuff. I would be remiss if I didn't mention all that stuff. But other than that, I mean, if I could give anything to people watching, and it's don't be afraid to go under the covers and figure out what's going on. Because anytime you go one step deeper, even if you only go one step deeper and you learn a little bit about what's going on under the seams, that keeps going. At one point in time, this is a great parting thought. Okay. At one point in time, I was teaching at a university because I have 3 degrees basically. I have a bachelor's in philosophy, I have a bachelor's in math, and I have a master's in computer science. When I got the master's in computer science and I defended my thesis, the school was so impressed and immediately offered me a teaching job. Because being in the fact that by the time it happened, I'd been speaking at conferences for 5-6 years, giving the presentation was no problem. They're like, hey, you're really good at teaching stuff. So I taught, between the two of those, they had me teach this math class inside of the comp sci department, basically discrete mathematics, logic and induction and stuff like that. Loved it. Loved every minute of it. I wish I still had time to do it. But at one point in time, one of my students came into my office during office hours, and she was kind of torn between, do I want to continue going down the computer science route, or do I want to move over to like computer engineering? Because I kind of like the hardware parts, but which one do you think will make me a better? She wanted to know about programming, but she wanted to know which one would make her better programming, going down the computer science route or going down the computer engineering. And the way I sat back and told her is, it doesn't matter which path you go through, even if you don't go through computer science or computer engineering. Again, my original 2 degrees are philosophy and math. What really helps and what will move you to that next level is that as you can see the way things flow through the system, that's when you get better understanding. So when you first start on a new system, all you're going to really know is I have this data coming in and I need to flow it back out in this way. And the flow is at a functional level. Mm-hmm. And then later, as you start to learn the application more, you can start to see how the data flows through the entire program. But in my mind, you want to go that step further because it doesn't just help at the application level. If you can really sit back and look back and go, how are the bits flowing through the system? So thinking all the way down to how is it going, .NET runs in a VM. It's an interpreted languages. It runs just like Java in the fact it compiles down to an intermediate language, and that intermediate language is interpreted and run real time in the .NET VM. So that VM is a virtual machine, which is a hardware abstraction layer. Well, if you're doing programming and you have to hit a piece of hardware within your code, you generally write a hardware abstraction layer so that if drivers change in the back end, it doesn't affect your front end and you can tweak things there. Well, this is the same thing going on. So overall, when you're thinking about that, how bits flow through the entire system, and you can start to see that end-to-end effect, that's when you start getting into these senior level things, and it becomes very natural and playing around with things. So, and I was like, so that's your end goal. How you get there is up to you. I've seen people do it through music. At a company I worked for, there was a guy who had a degree in music, but through that, because of the very regular meters and times that things go through, he very well understood how things step through the processor, because it was a time and a cadence and a beat. I've seen people go through mathematics because of the discrete mathematics and the logical train of thought. I've seen people go through all sorts of other, but it all came to, by the time they reached these high levels, it was, they could really see the big picture and see how things move through it. So if there's one thing I try to get to people these days, it's, yeah, I do a lot of this low level hacking and stuff, but even at your own, you should be looking at how's the system work. Even if you're just talking about your own application where you're working, figure out how things are going through the system, not through the area. And that's when you'll really see what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's tremendously well said. So thank you for that. And I'll put in my 2 cents here. I've known Chris for years and years. You're a friend, Chris, and you're an amazing human being. You're obviously geeky and techie. So keep doing what you're doing, because we appreciate you in every way. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and hang out with us. This is kind of what we are missing out in a pandemic. Me and Chris often meet at conferences, and we just sit down with a drink and we just hang out. This is kind of just a stopgap solution, hopefully. Or maybe this, even after the pandemic, we keep on doing these things because this is fun to talk to people who are passionate about whatever it is that we are doing. So thank you so much, Chris. And folks in the chat room, I saw Taylor and Code, Yum Cake Monster, Curious Drive. Thank you, everyone else, for tuning in. And I think this is it for us on this channel for this week. And next week, we'll be back with our scheduled shows for the week. But thank you all so much. We appreciate you. And again, these are difficult times for everybody, but please take care. Be kind to yourself and your families, and do the best we can to be productive. So thank you again, Chris. And
thank you. I absolutely enjoyed it. And hey, keep doing this stuff even after the pandemic, because what this type of show does is really show the human side of these people behind all the technology. And I think that's almost just as valuable as all the technical side, because yeah, I can sit here and sling C# all day long, but it's the people who really make it work. And we've been having enough problems with bad people, and not just our industry, but other industry, and highlighting the good ones and humanizing people, I think, is what's going to help with a lot of things.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, folks. So that's it from us. And we thank you, all of you. And yeah, take care. And we'll see you on the next stream. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.